Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Career Connection Chats, where you state the career and we make the connection. As always, I'm your host, Seth Lawrence, Delaware Military Academy class of 2022. I always love to say that. And welcome to Season 2, Law Enforcement. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, is the domestic intelligence and security service of the United States and is the principal federal law enforcement agency. Operating under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of Justice, the FBI is also a member of the U.S. intelligence community and reports to both the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence. A leading U.S. counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and criminal investigative organization, the FBI has jurisdiction over violations of more than 200 categories of federal crimes. Although many of the FBI's functions are unique, its activities in support of national security are comparable to those of the British MI5, the New Zealand GCSB, and the Russian FSB. Unlike the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, which has no law enforcement authority and is focused on intelligence collection abroad, the FBI is primarily a domestic agency maintaining 56 field offices in major cities throughout the United States and more than 400 resident agencies in smaller cities and areas across the nation. At an FBI field office, a senior-level FBI officer concurrently serves as a representative of the Director of National Intelligence. Despite its domestic focus, the FBI also maintains a significant international footprint, operating 60 legal attaché, or legat, offices and 15 sub-offices in the United States embassies and consulates across the globe. These foreign offices exist primarily for the purpose of coordination with foreign security services and do not usually conduct unilateral operations in the host countries. The FBI can and does at times carry out secret activities overseas. Just as the CIA has a limited domestic function, these activities generally require coordination across government agencies. The FBI was established in 1908 as the Bureau of Investigation, the BOI, or BI for short. Its name was changed to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in 1935. The FBI headquarters is in the J. Edgar Hoover Building located in Washington, D.C. Today, we have Special Agent Bret Bruchok, FBI. United States Naval Academy class in 1993. After completing the FBI Academy training in July of 2001, he worked as a case agent on the Norfolk Joint Terrorism Task Force, where he investigated domestic and international terrorism cases. In 2006, he was promoted to FBI HQ as a supervisor and later became a unit chief in the Counterterrorism Division. In 2009, he transferred to Baltimore Division and became a polygraph examiner. In 2018, he returned to management and finished his career as a supervisor in the FBI Polygraph Unit. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Season 2, Episode 1, Career Connection Chats, Law Enforcement. With me today is retired Special Agent Bret Bruchok. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Seth. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for joining me today on the show. Really appreciate it. Let's start off the first question. Could you explain who you are and how you got to where you are now?
Okay, that's a existential question there that you're asking, but I'll try to tell it in a concise manner. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm pleased to be here speaking with you. I am recently retired from the FBI after 30 years of government service. The last 21 with the FBI, the first 10 were with the Navy. I was a Naval Academy graduate in 1993. My first tour in the Navy was with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I was an intel analyst there for about 3 years, and then I ended up at the Naval Academy Prep School as an English instructor. At the end of my approximate 6 years of active duty, I applied to the FBI. My interest in the FBI came from primarily two sources. Having worked with a lot of the NCIS agents in that first tour of duty, I really enjoyed hearing their stories of the things they were doing. They took me out on the range. I got to shoot with them, and I really became interested at that point in a possible career in law enforcement. The other source of my interest came from basically just watching movies and TV shows about the police, about the FBI. Always interested me Never really had any relatives in law enforcement. I just, between the movies and the experience I had with the NCIS agents, I decided to apply to the FBI. I was fortunate to get in. I came in March of 2011. After the training at Quantico, I reported to Norfolk, Virginia. It was my first duty station. That was, I reported on July 11th, 2001, so 2 months before the September 11th attacks. And I was assigned right when I reported to the terrorism squad with the Norfolk FBI. I was one of 7 agents there. Shortly after 2011, the 2001 attacks, we became a joint terrorism task force of about 60 personnel working terrorism matters. So I spent my first 5 years in Norfolk working those terrorism cases. And then I did a stint in management up at FBI headquarters. I ended up as the unit chief of a unit in counterterrorism division. And then I transferred to the Baltimore field office at about the midpoint of my career. It was there that I became a polygraph examiner. And I spent the remainder of my career in polygraph as an examiner. And then the last couple of years in FBI, I ended up back at FBI headquarters, the polygraph unit. I was in charge of the applicant program for the FBI regarding polygraph, as well as the international program for polygraph. I got to travel all over the world in that capacity. And then I ended up back where I started in Norfolk, Virginia, as the Southeast Regional Polygraph program manager. It's a lot of P's there. Basically, I was in charge of all the examiners in the southeast part of the U.S. Reviewing their tests, and I retired in August of this past year. So it brings me to where I am now, sitting in front of you talking about my career.
That's awesome information. I mean, the FBI sounds like a really fun career. I know there's a lot of movies and TV shows out there, Criminal Minds. Well, what characteristics make a good person in this career field?
Well, I think first and foremost, being a good communicator. That's probably the skill that's going to get you the furthest in your career in law enforcement, particularly in FBI. The success of an FBI agent is based on the information he or she gathers, and that comes through developing sources, being out there on the street, talking to people, getting information pertaining to potential crimes or terrorist incidents, and as it pertains to interviews and interrogations, getting somebody to admit that they've committed a crime requires a certain set of skills. Requires being respectful first and foremost, being a good listener. And if you think about it, trying to interviewing somebody that's committed a serious crime, getting them to talk to you about it requires really, like I said, being a good communicator. So there are certain skill sets that the FBI desires, and those skill sets kind of change over time. When I started my career, the FBI was hiring a lot of accountants, a lot of lawyers, a lot of former military, former law enforcement. Those are all still great attributes for our applicants, but as the nature of crime has evolved over the years, now we're really looking for computer science skills as well, to handle the cyber threats that are ongoing in this day and age. Also, foreign language skills are huge. Being able to communicate in a foreign language allows you to develop information from sources of information that are closest to the crimes that you're investigating. But even with those skill sets still requires communication and being good at talking to people. I'm not saying there aren't introverts in the FBI, but those introverts have to know how to turn it on and be out there on the streets talking to people when they need to, even if that's not their comfort zone. Certainly, if you're somebody that enjoys people, then it's certainly a job for you.
I mean, that's good stuff. I mean, that's good stuff. I know a lot of, I mean, you met one of our cadets who was very interested in being in the FBI as well as myself. Later on in my career, I think learning about what characteristics the FBI looks into and knowing that as the way of crime evolves, so does the needs of the FBI. And I think that's a good statement made that people should put in perspective. Now,
Well, not to interrupt you, but when I was visiting your school, my first interaction with you was in the administrative office when I was picking up my guest ID, visitor's ID, and you walked up to me and said, "You're either a lawyer or a cop," and it's in that type of approachability, not being intimidated and not being afraid to walk up to a stranger and have a conversation. That's pretty much the skill set that I was referring to in your last question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of not going person, so I always like to talk to people. But I mean, there's just a way of law enforcement officers have a way about them when they carry themselves, and lawyers have a way of carrying themselves. So I assumed you were one of them, and I'm happy I was right. So like, what are some of your favorite things to do in the career when you were in the FBI?
Well, personally, I love to travel, and I didn't get to do a lot of traveling, oddly enough, when I was in the Navy with the two positions that I held. So with FBI, that really afforded me an opportunity to see the world. And with FBI, I traveled to every continent except Antarctica, and maybe one of these days I'll get there as well. But it was really for me, it was just a tremendous experience to be out there as a representative, not only of the FBI, but the United States, in dealing with our law enforcement partners overseas and representing the FBI. And it was great to see we have an excellent reputation overseas with our foreign counterparts. And in addition to the travel opportunities that I had, also one thing I really enjoyed about my career was the diversity of jobs that I held and experiences that I had. And one thing I always tell applicants when I used to do polygraphs and I'd have applicants come in for the special agent position, I tell them, if you're ever bored in your career, then you're doing something seriously wrong, because we all hit periods in our career where maybe we're a little stagnant and we end up in a rut. I mean, it's true of any career, but with the FBI, anytime I felt like I was in a rut, I found a new squad to work for, a new program for investigations. I picked up collateral duties. For me, I was able to go to the undercover school and complete that challenging training and work a few undercover cases, which really made my career interesting. The FBI sent me to a Spanish language school where I became fluent in Spanish, and that allowed me to travel all over Mexico and Central and South America, doing polygraphs in Spanish and actually conducting law enforcement training in Spanish as well. And that was a phenomenal opportunity, which I could use in my personal life as well. There's a lot of Spanish speakers, obviously, that I can practice with. And also the bonds and the friendships that I made throughout my career are I can't even describe how wonderful it is. The friends I made, and some of my fondest memories were after an arrest, going to get a drink and kicking back and having come through it safely. We all had each other's backs, and then we worked hard, and we also knew how to celebrate and enjoy the fruits of our labors. So I miss the people. That's the one thing that even 6 months since retiring, I miss the people I work with every day.
That's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I've always wanted to learn another language and be paid to learn another language, especially one being like Spanish, and one that's very very much spoken in our country. So that's pretty interesting. And you said something interesting about liking if you don't like your job in the FBI, there's always another something for you to do. Because that's really interesting. Sometimes people get bored and they want to move to like counterterrorism or polygraph or behavioral analysts, like in criminal minds. And I think that's pretty good information for our viewers. If you ever, there's the space in the FBI is what I'm getting from that. The space in the FBI for you to move around and transfer and try different things.
And as a special agent, we all carry the gun and the badge, have the same credentials, but within that job title, there are all kinds of subspecialties, collateral duties, if you will. We've got bomb techs, we've got technically trained agents that install listening devices, polygraph examiners. We have, computer forensic specialists, SWAT team members who go out on all the serious arrest. And there's evidence response team. There's many others other than those that I mentioned, but or agents that want to try something different, go into management. There's a lot of opportunities to develop leaders within the FBI, and so whether it's transferring to a different squad and investigating a different type of crime, moving to a different field office, going into a supervisory capacity, it's really limitless if you apply yourself and work hard. There was nothing that I wanted to do in the FBI that I wasn't able to.
I think that's pretty awesome, because I know people like to do people like to branch out and do other things. Like sometimes people get bored. And I think that's an awesome opportunity, because one of our past speakers that we just recently had, Brigadier General Fleming, said the same thing about his career in the military. There was always something for you to do. If you didn't like what you were doing, you could always switch around, and that you should enjoy, because you said it too, you should enjoy your job. And if you enjoy your job, it's not going to feel like work. And so for our viewers, if you're not interested in military life, but you want to serve, look at the FBI. They have the opportunities for you to do. Now moving on to the next question. What was like your least favorite thing to do in the career?
Oh boy, probably the paperwork and the training. People have an idea just based on watching movies and television shows that the job's all about kicking in doors and making an arrest and things like that. And the reality is that maybe 5% of the job. The other 95% is report writing and mandatory training. And it's, the things I enjoyed the least, even though it's extremely important. Everything that we do regarding an investigation, we do with the knowledge that it's probably going to end up in a courtroom and it's going to be scrutinized by defense attorneys, by a jury. So our work has to be very precise, and there's so many rules and regulations that we're bound by, not least of which is the Constitution. And so all that time behind the desk, if you're behind your desk typing up a report, you're not out on the street developing sources and locking people up. So it always seemed a nuisance to have to write everything up that we did and document everything. If it's not on paper, it didn't happen. They're fond of saying in the FBI. So that was probably the least enjoyable aspect of the job for me. For instance, I could spend 3 days writing an affidavit for an arrest warrant that took 3 minutes to execute. So it's kind of the way most things are. So a lot of time behind a desk. It's a more sedentary position than you might imagine, based on what you've probably seen in the media or on television.
And I didn't know that. And I think that actually works as a perfect segue into our next question. Based off of your career, what is the most accurate depiction of like a law enforcement show that features the FBI?
Well, it's funny. You've mentioned a couple Criminal Minds, and there's Quantico, there's FBI. I think there's a show called FBI on now, and a lot of people will ask me, "Hey, what do you think about Criminal Minds?" I've never watched it, and that's the one that I think is most popular now with the average person, and it's hard for me to watch shows about the FBI because I will just sit there and nitpick everything. And of course, obviously, they have to do things for dramatic license, but particularly with polygraph, I've never seen an accurate representation of a polygraph on television, which is probably good because it's not something. It's a law enforcement technique that doesn't necessarily need publicity, but I tend not to watch a lot of shows about the FBI since becoming an FBI agent. Now that wasn't true before. It's ironic that it was media and movies and television that got me interested in it. Once I became an FBI agent, I no longer wanted to see representations on television because they were so inaccurate. But I will answer the question. I think in my opinion, the most accurate show I've seen about the FBI is Mindhunters on, I think it was a Netflix program. And just even though that was set in, I believe, the 70s and 80s, the dialogue and the realism, I think, were on point. There was one scene I recall where the two agents, a senior agent and a very new agent, were in an accident involving their bureau vehicle. The senior agent was driving and they get in an accident. The very next scene, the junior agent is before his supervisor and saying, "Yeah, I was driving and we got in an accident," because his career would survive, the accident more than the senior guy, and that sort of thing I could see, really happening, that dynamic. So I thought Mindhunters was really good, and it's not specifically about the FBI, but I think the best or the most accurate show about law enforcement to ever appear on screen is The Wire, which was an HBO series. In fact, if I recall, I think the Baltimore police tried to get the show off the air or parts of it off the air because it was giving away law enforcement secrets. And in fact, that was set in Baltimore, where I was assigned to the Baltimore FBI office for about 10 years. And he was before my time, but I was told that one of the FBI agents that worked in that office was a paid consultant on The Wire, which is probably why it's very realistic. But the dialogue and just the nature of the relationships among the police officers, I think, is very accurate on that show, as well as the techniques that they implement to investigate their crimes.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of The Wire. I mean, especially my parents and their friends talk about it all the time. It was like one of the best rated shows on TV. I think like after The Sopranos. So that's kind of fun. And Mindhunters I've definitely heard of too. From other from references from other shows. Talking about Mindhunter.
Mindhunter is about the origins of the behavioral sciences unit, and that's probably the question I most often get from people your age when they talk about the FBI. I can't tell you how many young men and women have told me, "Hey, I want to be a criminal profiler. I want to join the FBI and become a criminal profiler." And I think they sometimes forget that you don't join as a criminal profiler, that you're an agent first and you got to work at that. I mean, that's only a small subdivision of the FBI. And like I said earlier, if that's something that really interests you and you apply yourself in the FBI, you can end up in that unit with the right background and if your performance is good enough to qualify. But first, you got to be an FBI agent before you can become a criminal profiler.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. You got to work your way up. I think one of the things that our viewers wanted to know is, what is the process of becoming an FBI agent?
Well, a couple of qualifications need to be met right off the bat, and it's generally being at least being between the ages of 23 to 37. There are some exceptions to that, depending on if there's a very in-need skill that a person has and they're not maybe we'd hire them under 23, but it'd be very rare. In the case of veterans, we will hire veterans over the age of 37, but in general, 23 to 37 years of age, U.S. citizenship, and I think it's 2 years now. It used to be 2 years of work experience, so those are the the must-haves in order to even apply. And then the process is a very lengthy one. Involves obviously criminal history and checks and all that, drug testing, physical exam, and background investigation that where you grew up, who you went to school with, neighbors, everywhere you live. That usually takes about 6 months for the government to finish back schooling, a bachelor's degree as well. Should have mentioned that earlier. That's a requirement. And then a polygraph, and that's kind of where I fit into the process. I was a polygraph examiner, and polygraph examiners, polygraph applicants, employees, sources, suspects in every type of crime. But the bulk of the tests that I ran were on applicants. So that's obviously for all employees, not just special agents, but passing a polygraph exam is another requirement. And of course, meeting our drug guidelines, which, all that can be found in FBI.gov or FBIjobs.gov, has all that information, but those are the basics.
That's good to know, because I know a lot of people want to know, well, how do I become an FBI agent? Do I need to be like a 4.0 GPA? Do I need to have a great SAT score? And I think that sheds a lot of light on the FBI is more interested in, well, one, you don't do drugs, or you don't recently do drugs.
Exactly.
You don't do any crimes, and you're a citizen, and basically you're of body, you're of sound mind, body, and spirit, and you're worth putting effort and money into training into becoming an FBI agent.
Certainly is challenging to get into the FBI. And our conversation's been all about the special agent position, which is what I'm familiar with. But just to remind your viewers that there are very many professional support positions, and somebody that wants to work in FBI, there's many more things they can do besides being a special agent. Or if they want to be a special agent, but they don't qualify for one reason or another, then certainly there's a myriad of other positions available. There's surveillance specialists, there's intelligence analysts, there's language specialists, computer specialists, forensic examiners, lab scientists that work in the FBI laboratory, and I'm leaving out many, but all of this again is on our website. And I should mention as well, back to your question about qualifications for becoming a special agent, part of the application process also involves a written test that's called phase one. The process is divided into phases. And then once you complete phase one, then phase two involves a panel interview, structured interview with three FBI agents as the interview panel, and there's also another writing test involved in phase two, and then I think that's pretty much covers it. Yeah.
Awesome. And now, what our series is about connecting mentors with young people in this generation, and hopefully create a mentor relationship. So I must ask, who was your mentor, and what were the best lessons they taught you?
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, the FBI does have a structured mentor program, which is relatively new. Before, people had mentors, but they weren't assigned them, and it wasn't documented. And now there's a more structured program. I never participated in that program, but In my 20 years, I had many supervisors and many leaders to observe and to learn from. And the one that sticks out most, her name is Betty. She was my assistant section chief. I had mentioned that I was a unit chief in the counterterrorism division. And prior to that position, I was just a supervisor, a supervisory agent in that unit. And my boss, my unit chief, retired very suddenly without any advance notice. And so I was asked to temporarily act as the unit chief while they searched and posted for a permanent replacement. I was only 5 years into my FBI career, so I was far too junior for such a position. But after being the acting unit chief for 4 months, I decided, hey, I think I can handle the responsibilities of this position. So the section chief, who was Betty's boss, said, "No, you're too junior. If you want to do it, you'll get your chance down the road, but you haven't paid your dues, so to speak." But Betty really had a lot of confidence in me, and she went out on a limb for me and really vouched for me and pressured her boss to give him a chance. And so she recognized the things I was doing to improve the unit, and really was my advocate. And I never thought this senior curmudgeonly her boss would ever change his mind about something, but he did. Gave me an opportunity very early in my career to have a leadership position. And so I always valued what she taught me about believing in somebody when they show you that they have the tools and attributes to complete a task. And she put herself out there. She went out on a limb for me, and I'd like to think she never regretted that decision, and I didn't let her down. So I think Betty's my mentor. I'd mention her full name if I because I really appreciate it. I don't want to violate any confidence, but if she ever sees this, she knows who I'm talking about. But just one thing I'd like to say in general about leadership. I was a naval officer and at the Naval Academy. I was a leadership laboratory, worked for many good officers and a few bad ones when I was in the Navy. And same thing with FBI. Most of my supervisors were good. I had a few that were horrible, for lack of a better word. But I have to say this, I value the bad supervisors that I had as much as the good ones, because I learned just as much from them. When I got to a position of leadership and management, what I learned from those individuals, helped me decide what kind of leader I didn't want to be. And coupled with all the great things I picked up along the way from the good supervisors that I had. So I would just say that as a lesson to your viewers: if you ever have a bad supervisor, a bad boss, look on the bright side of it. When you're in that position, or if you aspire to be, you're going to know exactly how you don't want to be viewed or perceived, and what things you want to avoid doing.
Awesome. I think that's awesome advice that people want to hear, because you have been a leader in both federal law enforcement and military, which is, I think, awesome that you can give insight into leadership advice from both of those careers. And I think you basically combined season 1 and season 2 into one, and I think that's pretty awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And so well, thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything that you want to any last minute things you want to say to our viewers?
No, only that one thing that in the last couple of years, there've been some at the highest levels of FBI leadership. There's been cases of unethical behaviors, and several leading some of our highest ranking officials were fired a few years ago. And I think the public perception of the FBI maybe took a hit there. But I have to say that, what, you often hear is the rank and file of the FBI, the men and women that I've worked with, love their country. They don't care who's president, what their affiliation is. They're going to do their job unbiased. And I think the FBI has kind of gotten a bad rap in the last couple of years, but they say a few bad apples spoil the bunch. But by and large, the men and women that work for the FBI are extremely dedicated to their country, and like me, they love their country. And I hope that your viewers will recognize that, and I hope that some people that watch your program are inspired to, whether it be the FBI or ATF or DEA or local or state police, that despite what you see in the news these days, law enforcement is a noble career and a noble pursuit. And if I've somehow influenced anybody in a positive way towards that career, then this was well worth the time.
I mean, absolutely. I think you definitely have struck forward with some of our viewers, and I hope they take a career in the FBI or any federal law enforcement agency for that matter. But thank you so much for doing this. And ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned, because next up in our season, we have local, state, and other federal agency officers who will be interviewing with us to answer your questions. Again, thanks for watching Career Connection Chats. I hope you learned something great. I hope you learned something you want to teach other people. And if you want to be on our show, please email us at careerconnectionchats@gmail.com. And if you want to ask our guest speaker your own questions, please email at the email posted below. To see more, please visit our YouTube channel and share what you've learned.